Welcome to A Tale of Decay in 360 Degrees. I'm your host, Ryan Sokash, and today we are visiting the one and only wreck of the ORP Wicher. In its prime, this was a lead-class ship of the Wicher class and was a remarkable destroyer that served in the Polish Navy during the Second World War. The vessel was ordered on April the 2nd, 1926, laid down on the 19th of February, 1927, and launched on July the 10th, 1928. Commissioned on July the 8th, 1930, this ship was 106.9 meters long with a 10.5 meter beam and a 3.5 meter draught. It was well armed and had a top speed of 33.8 knots, or 62.6 kilometers per hour. This infamous ship was designed to be a fast and versatile destroyer that could perform a wide range of tasks, including escorting convoys, hunting submarines, and engaging enemy surface vessels. The ship saw its first action during the invasion of Poland in September of 1939, and it was assigned to the Polish Navy's destroyer squadron. The Wicher took part in several engagements with German forces, including the Battle of Hell, where it successfully engaged several German warships and helped to sink a German destroyer. And considering that noble past, all that was of a ship that was constructed in France in the early 1930s, and was considered one of the most advanced destroyers of its time, how could it just be rotting here, forgotten, decaying, big pile of rust? That story in and of itself is interesting. It's also interesting that you're able to come up close to this ship and touch it, see it firsthand, when a very similar vessel, known as the Błyskawica, stands as a museum in Gdynia, just across the bay, not so far from here. So what's the difference? Why is one ship a celebrated museum, technically still in active service, whereas the other one is rusting away and forgotten? Well, you see, despite its success, the ORP Wicher was eventually forced to withdraw from the Baltic Sea as the German forces continued to advance. On the morning of September the 3rd, 1939, while moored in the harbor, the Wicher was attacked by two German destroyers, firing at a range of 9 nautical miles. Polish warships and a shore battery repulsed the attack, with a nearby ship, the Griff, scoring 2 hits. Afterwards, the German squadron put up a smoke barrier and withdrew. Later that day, Wicher, still in harbor, repulsed 2 air raids. However, in a third attack at about 1500, she was attacked by 2 groups of German planes, which scored 4 hits. 2 bombs hit her amidships. One hit the bow, and the other was a near miss that fractured her hull in several places on the starboard side. Wicher started to sink, and her crew made it ashore, where they joined the land defense of Pomerania. 1 sailor was killed, and 22 were wounded in the air attack. After the end of the hostilities, in November of 1939, the Germans raised the wreck and towed her to the shallow waters, where, according to some sources, she was to be repaired and commissioned. Wicher's wreck survived World War II, and after the war, she was towed out of the port area of Jastarnia and used as a target for aerial bombardment practice until 1955. In 1963, she was partly scrapped, permanently deserted on the bay side of the Hel Peninsula, just aside a quiet military base and the city's garbage dump and sewage treatment plant. However, it still provides a value of sorts. You see, the ship was placed here as a strategic wave break. as the city of Hell's greatest threat of flood actually comes from the bayside. Now, these floodings are unusual, but when they occur, the city is extremely vulnerable. As you can see, the remains of this ship are beaten and battered. The frontmost portion of the ship, where the bow is located, is reasonably intact, but when you come towards the midsection of the ship, where I'm standing now, you can see that it has been torn apart, and it's very difficult to establish what parts of the ship were removed for scrap and what parts have been destroyed by the weather and the elements. You see, when Poland was suffering under communism, Hell was a closed military city. You needed special permission to visit. Foreigners were forbidden, as was photography. The entire area was completely different to how you'd recognize it to be today. Fences stopped people from accessing beaches, and this area was most likely never photographed by a civilian. Exploring here was extremely hazardous. The ship is just riddled with sharp edges and heavy objects that seem they could easily fall over at a moment's notice. As we make our way towards the stern of the ship, you'll start to recognize pieces of the engine. It's monumental. The pieces are enormous. And it's here that you start to realize what a grand ship this once was. And being here really leads me to wonder about preservation. You see, had this ship been preserved as a museum or restored as was once the plan, the physicality of the passing of time would have been lost forever. And that's what makes this so special. In fact, the entire beach that this shipwreck stands upon is littered with scraps from the ages. You can't even really swim here, it would be too dangerous. But that's okay for me, because the whole rest of the Hell Peninsula is perfect for swimming. But it's only here that you can stand and gaze upon a real-life shipwreck, the passage of time, and pay a calm reverence to a bygone time and a forgotten ship.